Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You got your host, Dank, and we're on episode 758. I can't believe it's something like close to 20 years ago, and we're still doing it, putting out the information. I've got some interesting stories, articles that I came up with, and wanted to spread the word around. And also, still looking for guests, so you got to renew the request or the invitation. Come on down and be on the show. Come on down and watch the show. Watch us do the show. Just come on down and say hi. But anyway, we'll start off. This is right out of the chute here. This is an article that was in Lifehacker.com, dated August 11th, written by Kyle Jagger. Bernie Sanders talks marijuana differences with Biden, who he says could enact reforms but chooses not to. Senator Bernie Sanders, he's independent out of Vermont, says President Joe Biden could and should use executive authority to end federal marijuana prohibition on his own, but the two of them have differences when it comes to drug policy. During a recent podcast interview on Crystal Kyle and Friends, the senator at first cautioned that the president is limited to what he can do unilaterally. But when host Crystal Ball rattled off a list of things Biden could theoretically change with executive action, including changing cannabis's federal classification, Sanders replied that yes, he could do that. As a Democrat presidential candidate in 2020, Sanders himself pledged that he would legalize marijuana across the country on the first day in office if elected. That idea has been questioned by some. However, as there are unique challenges associated with a presidential move to unilaterally remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act. To reschedule marijuana through the executive branch, the Secretary of Department of Health and Services or an outside party would have to file a petition which would then be reviewed by the Attorney General, who has usually delegated that responsibility to the Drug Enforcement Administration. The Attorney General can also initiate the process on their own, requesting a specific review directly to HHS, the Food and Drug Administration, which would then assess the scientific, medical, and public health implications before submitting that review to the Justice Department, which would then effectuate the appropriate reclassification under federal law. But even if Biden did have the legal authority to federally legalize marijuana himself, it stands to reason that he would not go that far. Sanders noted in the new podcast interview that the president does not share his perspective on the issue. Joe Biden and I on marijuana, I think the war on drugs has been a disaster for this country, for the African-American community, Sanders later said. I think it should end. I think marijuana should be legalized. We could do that fairly simply, but yeah, we have differences. The White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said as recently as last month that nothing has changed with respect to the president's opposition to adult use legalization. However, the trio of senators behind the bill to federally schedule cannabis are actively discussing the policy change with the White House in hopes of changing Biden's mind. In any case, the president did campaign on a promise to enact modest reforms such as decriminalizing cannabis possession, expunging prior records, and respecting the rights of states to set their own laws. Since taking office, however, his administration has not made progress on any of these promises and has instead fired his own White House staffers over marijuana and sought to extend a budget provision that has blocked Washington, D.C. from legalizing cannabis sales. After their primary battle and prior to the general election, Biden and Sanders established a criminal justice task force that was charged with making various policy recommendations for the incoming president. But marijuana legalization did not make the cut, despite the fact that many members of the group personally supported the reform. Stacy Walker, a Lynn County, Iowa supervisor who was recruited for the task force, said earlier this year that Biden was really concerned about how supporting legalization could have impacted the outcome of the election, despite the fact that a supermajority of voters support the reform. In any case, advocates have sharply criticized the administration for failing to take steps to enact reforms Biden did promise, and it seems increasingly likely that it will be incumbent upon Congress to fulfill those goals. And whether there is enough support to pass comprehensive legalization in the Senate, where Democrats hold just a slim majority, it's another question on its own. So the battle continues. Say, trying to get statewide legalization, and we've got plenty of support for it. You still have the naysayers, though, so it's going to be just keep pushing and shoving. That was my biggest problem with Biden as a candidate. I mean, between Trump and Biden, there was no choice. We had to go with Biden, period. But we'll never be having real happy with Biden's attitude towards marijuana. He claims that it might. I think the statement was, it could be a gateway drug. In other words, he kind of like gave himself a little back door. It could be a gateway drug, and we all know it's not a gateway drug. It's actually an exit drug. But anyway, I'm still glad that he's president. I just wish that we'd get with the legalization program. It's common sense, you know. But and then we have the U.S. Congress. This is an article that's published in the greenentrepreneur.com website, written by Emma Frances Stone, as she's has a PhD, dated August 11th this year. U.S. Congress clashes with Veterans Affairs Bureau over medical cannabis. If the U.S. government has done one thing consistently over the years with cannabis reform, it's fight fellow bureaucrats over medical marijuana. Just hours after the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs released an article condemning the plant as a remedy for post-traumatic stress syndrome on Wednesday, a Senate committee passed a budget proposal that would expand medical marijuana access for veterans. In layman terms, the Democrat-controlled Senate wants the VA doctors to be able to recommend and perhaps prescribe the plant. The VA is saying cannabis would make ill veterans even worse off than before. Research to date does not support cannabis as an effective PTSD treatment, said the VA report, authored by 4 of the department's doctors. And some studies suggest cannabis can be harmful, particularly when used for long periods of time. But U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley, a Democrat from Oregon, begs to differ. Merkley and the Senate Appropriations Committee on Wednesday approved an amendment to the VA budget for 2022, which inserted language prohibiting the Bureau from interfering with or denying service to veterans involved in a state legal medical cannabis program. We now have 36 states with medical cannabis, and our veterans want to know from their VA doctor that what their thoughts are on the pros and cons for treating a variety of issues, including PTSD, Merkley said. According to the VA report, over 20% of U.S. military veterans aged 18 to 44 and 11.9% of all vets used the plant in 2020. That's up just 9% in 2014. Merkley noted that the numbers are likely underestimated because respondents may fear losing their military benefits if identified as users of a federally banned substance. Federal law called for such sanctions as recently as 2018. While authorities are no longer supposed to revoke military benefits for medical marijuana users, Merkley said long-standing fear among veterans caught using the plant could remain. Congressional support for veterans' access to medical marijuana over the years has been largely bipartisan. The House has approved legislation to allow VA doctors to issue medical marijuana recommendations to patients on at least 4 different occasions, but the measure has yet to become law. The 2022 budget passed out of committee on Wednesday must still be approved by the full Senate and House of Representatives before reaching President Joe Biden's desk. So it's still going to be an uphill battle because we're still trying to push it to the legislature, and especially the Senate. I don't have much hope for the Senate for any common sense. So I don't know, but I know the efforts will continue, and they've got some good people working on it. And then we've got this one, which I thought was quite interesting. Free joints given to people getting vaccinated in Washington. This is by Elsa Olofsson. It was on mixmag.net, dated June 9th, 2021. Cannabis shops in the U.S. state of Washington have been given permission to offer free joints to those who take the COVID-19 vaccine. The promotion has been nicknamed Joints for Jabs and means that anyone over the age of 21 can receive a single pre-rolled joint if they get vaccinated at a vaccine clinic by July 12th. The idea originated across the country in Washington, D.C. when drug reform advocacy group D.C. Marijuana Justice handed out over 4,200 joints across 30 vaccination sites in D.C. on 4/20. The Biden administration is encouraging state officials to use inventive methods in order to increase vaccination rates. Many other U.S. states are trying to incentivize citizens in other ways, including lottery prize draws in Ohio, free beers in New Jersey, as governors work to compensate for vaccine rates that continue to fall in the U.S. Free joints or edibles are also available in Arizona for those of legal age. The New York Times database was reported that as of July 7th, 58% of Washington citizens have had a single dose, while 49% have been fully vaccinated. So whatever it takes, I guess, to get it done. Maybe I should have held out for a little while and gotten something for taking my shot, other than what I should be doing. But anyway, I got both of my shots, and very little ramification from it up to this point. So we'll finish up this half, and we'll get on the other half shortly. Welcome back to the second half of episode 758. You got Dank, your host, and we're checking out some news stories that I've come across, of course, cannabis related. And this one here, I thought this was an interesting idea. A lot of good information here. I don't know, there might be some people that might disagree with it and may be able to want to add some to it. So this is a good point to bring up. If you're watching this on Facebook, make a comment if you'd like to add something or say, anyway, contribute something to the discussion, I should say. Leave us a note on the YouTube page, and it'd be interesting to hear back from people watching it and help us out too. Now, this story's got 3 or 4 words which I personally have never seen before, and I tried looking them up, and I don't know that they are words. So when I get to them, I'll spell them out and maybe get the feedback on this, but all in all, it's an interesting article. How to heighten your high when you smoke weed. This is by Danielle Greco. And it was in the Lifehacker.com website on August 12th this year. Despite our nation's confusingly slow embrace of legal cannabis, recreational weed use has been a thing for millennia. While once it grew wild in parking lots in New York City, it now costs a pretty penny, especially when laced with all the taxes legal sales add in. So searching for ways to embrace the effects delivered by every bud is a valid strategy. Some of us have skirted the law to smoke weed for years. Others are accessing legal, personalized experiences for the first time ever. And one such experience is getting absolutely zonked. A time-honored tradition that for one type of person means a Star Trek or Deep Space Nine marathon and a pack of Trader Joe's dark russet chips, while for others means social, active, or outdoor fun. Any and all of these are valid ways to enjoy the effects of cannabis consumption, but some of you might need a little help to feel fully floated, and we are here to supply some tips and tricks to get you there. Number one, why mango and weed are a potent mix. Well, there isn't a recipe or a dining guide. Knowing your way around certain foods can be helpful when you want to get the most out of a high. And that's thanks to phytochemicals. Cannabis itself is made up of hundreds of these guys, all of which engage the entourage effect. The combined action of those chemicals and cannabinoids like THC is what triggers the intoxication we know as a high. A good portion of those chemicals are also present in tons of other foods, plants, and products. Aromatic compounds like terpenes give oid, O-U-I-D, there's one of the first words, give oid its luxurious and varied scent. I'm not sure what that word is, but marcin, found in mango fruits, is but one of those substances and has been researched for its antioxidant, anxiety-reducing properties. With the right variety of mango and cannabis, you can access this beautiful effect. But it's important to point out that effects are very widely from strain to strain. This isn't mere stoner talk either. The theory behind it scientifically sound, but the resulting experience will not be easily predictable unless you have a lab handy to perform tests on both your fruit and your fruity weed. The myrcene is not only present in mango, but also in bay leaves, lemongrass, and cardamom. This funky, pungent psychochemical is also not the only psychoactive terpene in the arsenal. Limonene is often seen as energizing and is easy to access in citrus fruits, while linalool is the floral backbone of soothing lavender. All these terpenes have featured in a wave of experience-based products in the cannabis market and purport to direct your experience from dosist pins to kin slips. Now, I don't know what a dosist pin is or a kin slips, but anyway, that's what the article's saying. And then there are less scientific supported but often repeated anecdotal tricks, which for me means banana bread. While there's not much data to back it up yet, anyone who's eaten my infused banana bread has gotten explicitly more stoned than intended, and not because I packed it with high amounts of THC. Sometimes I think it's the spices. I use clove, cinnamon, and cardamom to flavor the delicious loaf, but similarly spiced foods have never worked quite like the banana version. For now, I suspect the effect could be linked to the phytochemicals in the extremely overripe bananas that I use to make it. Direct your high with aromatherapy. There you go. While getting super stoned can be great, let's be real. Enhancing your high might also mean taking it down a notch. There's no proven way to sober up from cannabis over intoxication. And while it's not life-threatening, it's pretty unpleasant for people who didn't sign up for the trip. Anecdotally, sniffing peppercorns and drinking lemonade work, but I prefer to use basic aerotherapy to chill out a chill sesh. There's another one, S-E-S-H, sesh. Using scents to relax the body and brain helps you focus on the experience, which inherently enhances it. Grab a whiff of linalool-rich lavender to center things, or dab on some diluted mint to combat pain. These methods both work before and after consumption. Take a tolerance break. One major way to feel more stoned is to get stoned less often. If you are a strictly recreational and moderate consumer of cannabis, you can probably attest to feeling a bit smacked in the head when you pick it up again, whereas a daily or medical consumer may need a more potent punch to feel the vibe. Taking what's called a tea break, short for tolerance, for a period of time, effective on your consumption habits, gives your body's CB receptors a chance to reset. Excuse me. That reminds me, I had friends that had to abstain for some period of time on cannabis use for one reason or another. I always told them that I envied their first high when they start up again. Then there's the mix and match. I struggle to classify this as a method, but a pretty common way of sousing yourself up involves combining cannabis with other intoxicating and or psychoactive substances. Caffeine and weed is one of the easiest to pull off. Many regular consumers take in cannabis and coffee or tea or soda or Red Bull at the same time to get a calm focus. Some find it too anxiety-inducing, but this mix is pretty safe. So don't be afraid to experiment if you already use one of the two reliably and successfully. Other combinations are more complicated. Alcohol and cannabis is yet another go-to for many, but there are risks not widely discussed. THC can magnify the unsafe effects of alcohol, and if you're already drinking a lot, that is not a good idea. And combining the two creates an excess of THC in the bloodstream, which means extra intoxication. Though you might enjoy the buzz of this intoxicating pairing, be sure not to overdo it. Still, one more mixture remains quite taboo, but since it's decriminalized in my area, I can tell you it's regularly consumed, often simultaneously with weed. Psychedelics like mushrooms or DMT and others are used in self-therapeutic situations as well as recreational scenarios. This is yet another understudied area of research, but some report that cannabis can balance and soften some of the unpleasant side effects of psychedelic substances. A word of caution, I'd strongly recommend keeping them separate until you have experience, as many find them too intense when taken together. Even if you've been chiefing, there's the last word that I'm not sure what they mean by this. Even if you've been chiefing since the 70s, try out one of these heady tacks. It could change everything. After all, mixing cannabis into the flow of your daily life with all of its foods, drinks, and activities is the best way to enjoy it. So I thought that was interesting. I've always said they say don't mix your drugs, and I say, well, you got to know how to mix them. I always thought a little bit of wine and cannabis go real well together. I'm not a big alcohol drinker by any means. In fact, I could call alcohol stupid juice, but they do work well together. I do believe. And our last story. This is titled "The Canadian Driver Was Found with Almost 1,000 Kilos of Marijuana," written by Jim Ross, and it was in the website mixbag.net, dated August 12, 2021. A truck driver caught with $3 million worth of weed says, "I was tricked." A truck driver caught entering Detroit with 1,000 kilograms of marijuana has said that he was tricked into smuggling across the border, and has now found his way out of charges. In a joint effort with his lawyer, Canadian trucker Tashbir Sain escaped prosecution by pleading that he hadn't done anything wrong and claiming that it was a setup. As it stands, Singh is in the clear, but the court has not ruled out a permanent dropping of the charges. 32-year-old driver was said to have been crossing the border in Detroit, headed for Ohio. He was subsequently caught by Detroit-based border agents who discovered almost 1,000 kilograms. Anyway, he claimed he didn't have it, and so he might be able to pull it off, so I don't know. But anyway, that's some of the things that are happening out in the world in regards to cannabis. So again, looking for guests, come on by, and it's been a pleasure on this end, and I hope it's been at least part of that on your end. So we'll see you next time.